Hello and welcome to the Think Bambu podcast, the show where we unpack the personal and professional growth journeys from some of the most interesting minds in marketing and business. And today we have none other than Fiona Morrison. Fiona, for those that are unfamiliar with you, would you like to give yourself a little introduction?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me. So I'm Fiona. I'm currently Deputy Director of Marketing and Communications at the University of Glasgow, quite new in post, actually. I started out teaching creative writing and English literature internationally, and I've since come back and used storytelling through brand positioning and marketing in different sectors. And I'm now focused very much on higher education, bringing my teaching experience together with my marketing experience in my latest role at Glasgow. And I just want to say it's an extra pleasure to talk to you, Jamie. We've had so many chats over the years, so it's great to be able to put one on record and be here today.
Thank you. Thank you very much. For those that don't know, I've known Fiona for about, I actually don't know, 4 or 5 years now?
It's one of those COVID calculations.
Yeah, that's where I sort of threw myself off there.
Time seems less. Yeah, but it's probably been at least 5 or 6 years now.
Aye. Sorry, I'm thinking it's still like 2025, 2024 in my head. I'm like, no, it's 26 now. Yes. So, yeah, known Fiona for a little while, and she's had an absolutely fascinating career journey. I know we're not going to get into it here, but maybe on a separate one, we'll get into more your creative writing endeavors and go that route, because that's also quite interesting. Quite interesting. No, it's very interesting here. But here, so we're talking here about growth and from the personal side and the professional side, and I would like us to go back to the very not quite the very beginning, because I know you had a little foray into lecturing, and we'll get into that there. But what was the drivers there, either internally or externally, that got you to a career within marketing and specifically the education sector?
Yeah, so as I say, I actually started in higher education. And then when I came back to the UK, I was thinking about career, and I had all this experience in teaching literature. And I was really curious about the role of content at that time within commerce. So I started out as a copywriting intern for a fashion startup. And speaking of drivers, it's usually based on the offering that specific role has to offer. And it was fascinating because they were sourcing designers from Europe, independent designers for the China market, where we knew there was massive demand for more personalized designs rather than, the luxury products that everyone seemed to have access to. And something about that really fascinated me. So I got to learn from founders who had a really strong background in marketing from the ground up. And as always, the way in startup environments, you end up doing everything. So I actually ended up being a marketing and partnership manager, and I was sourcing designers, and I was going to trade shows, and I was building a brand, and I was working with the Shanghai offices. And I really learned a lot about not just content, but how, if you're a creative person, and my mentor boss told me at the time, you are a problem solver and you can solutionize and you can be really good in business. So I think it was unexpected learning for me. I went in to go into content and copywriting, but I came out the other side with all of this amazing experience that told me that maybe I'm more capable of certain things than I thought I was. And then I went and worked in a number of different startups, a number of different luxury brands. But I always felt, in terms of motivation, it's very much, like I say, what the offering is and what it represents. So it was usually about craftsmanship, personalized experiences, the human side of fashion. But I always felt like I wanted to do something that felt that it was impacting society. And I also missed that community piece of working in a university. I feel like universities are, at the intersection of storytelling, change, research, possibility, empowerment, like all of these things that inspire me. And I always loved my time working in a uni. So that's what drove me to then come back to the sector, but bringing my marketing experience. So it sort of worked out quite nicely in that way.
So what I found fascinating there was that you went in with a sort of different assumption of what you were going to be doing, and who you a perception of who you thought you you were, or at least what your strengths were, someone else there said, actually, you're quite you're quite good at this. I'd like to push you in that direction. How did that make you feel? And how did that conversation go? Was there a conversation? How was that played back to you? And how did that make you feel?
Is a good question because I think I'd seen creativity up until that point as output and the actual thing that you're creating and that what kind of person that makes. Whereas I remember her specifically saying to me, this was my boss in my first ever job, creative people are gold dust to organizations because you need to have the imagination to be able to think about what's possible in the first place. And then you have to be able to find solutions to make that real. And I suppose it was quite expansive feeling. It was like, oh, I actually, when you're at the start of your career and you don't really know necessarily what you're going to do. And both you and I graduated at a point of recession and difficulties, and actually getting into a
Yeah.
career felt quite extra daunting for different reasons. And I would definitely say to anyone who's not sure what they want to do, go into a startup because you'll probably find the thing that you don't necessarily know you have in that environment because it will stretch you. To be completely honest, it was really, really tough. You know, you had to learn fast and you had to learn the hard way often. But I think startup environments enable you to test, take risks, be creative. And I think when you're a certain age, you feel like you can do that a bit more. So you can just go in
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's like, oh, actually, I'm not so good at this. That's okay. But I am seemingly to be more suited to this. Whereas if you go into like a graduate scheme and it's very focused and very channeled, then I would have completely missed out on all of those learnings that I got in those early days.
Yeah, yeah. Well, just so talking about those those early days here, I want to ask you a question about I've asked a few guests around this, and it's about like a formative experience that you might not know is happening at the time. That might have actually been one of them.
Yeah.
But was there a formative experience that you didn't really know was happening at the time, but when reflection you go, oh wow, that has actually really influenced how I approach my work and how I approach people? Has there been anything like that?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think I was thinking about this too around marketing specifically and how actually I feel like if you're not failing in marketing, especially in the early days, you're probably not doing it right. And so actually the thing I was going to speak about was that theme of failure and the fact that I know a certain percentage of businesses fail, like new businesses, we know that it's very low success rates. I would be curious what during that time when I was working for a number of startups during the dot-com boom. So they were all e-commerce websites. And I actually ended up being made redundant back to back very early on. And it was really tough. And, you know, I was so genuinely believing in what we were offering and working, you know, all of the hours and everything. So I think in terms of formative experience, I would say that has stayed with me in a good way because I think in marketing, you have to be thinking about the present and also the future, and you need to be forecasting risk and you need to be forecasting success. And I think I've always just got that strategic forward looking thinking now, like I can't switch it off because I've worked for failed businesses, and that I think is actually a really good thing. And being successful in marketing is about seeing really what is in front of you, and not pretending otherwise, because I think sometimes we can. That was some of the learnings I got from those startups, was that maybe we didn't face the reality a little bit soon
Yeah,
enough.
yeah.
So that's really what I've brought into my work, and also just a feeling of it's okay if that does happen because we are living in really tough times. We're living in really difficult financial times, and I know a lot of people that are going through this right now. And I think it's good to never assume that change isn't around the corner and be prepared for it, but not in a negative way. Just having a very grounded perspective on things. So yeah, I think
That's
that
cool.
would be the most formative thing.
Just when you said there about because there will be people listening to this that are either currently working, though they might not know it, or have worked for a failed business. That's what I'm saying. Like they're working for it, but the business is failing, or what's happening there. They might not know. But and when I've been in that position as well, and that business now no longer exists. It wasn't my business; it was the other business I was working with at the time. And whilst you can say it failed. What did it fail on? It failed to do what it said it was going to do to the level it was supposed to be doing it, and it lost its income, its people, there to go. I'd say for those that are in that situation, not to go, okay, well that failed, let's move on. It only really is a failure if you have failed to think of the lesson that it's taught you. And what that situation taught me was things of what not to do. And okay, that sounds like a bit of a negative outcome of it, but I've taken those lessons, going, okay, if I don't do this and I apply the opposite approach, then I've been more successful there, and I can help others not make that same mistake. Now, this is predominantly in the search engine landscape. However, I've been able to use that as a real life example and be able to bring about the real life resources to show, hey, this has happened. This isn't a made up story. I can show you exactly how it happened, how they got into that situation, the outcomes of it, and what to do to avoid it. And I can think of at least 4 businesses off the top of my head that I've been able to help them not make that same mistake. But if that business hadn't failed in that aspect, I wouldn't have that lesson that I could pass on to others, and I wouldn't have that lesson myself. So it's for anybody listening going, okay, fail. Is that bad? I'm like, it's only bad if you don't take the lessons from it. But to talk about that, to transition nicely onto the next topic I want to bring up to you, was around professional challenges, because that one there I just brought up was probably one of the biggest professional challenges I've ever had, because it was a rather large one. Um, how Talking broadly, you can go as specific as you want here. Has there ever been a professional challenge that you've been able to navigate and overcome, and what kind of challenge was it? Was it around um a specific skill that you were trying to learn, trying to grow? Was it a mindset? Was it politics around there? Just to give you buckets that people have pulled from in the past.
Yeah, so I was actually thinking really hard about this question. And I was trying to think of a specific example, of challenge. Like I've had conflicting directives from leaders, or, financial situations, or political pressures, or all these things. And then actually, when I was really thinking about it, I actually think the harder challenge has been more about accumulative stress over a longer period of time, when
Mm-hmm.
things are really
Yeah.
uncertain, or things like, going through change, but the change isn't yet defined, and you're sort of in these tricky periods, which I think actually a lot of people are going through right now. And so I think it was that question of mindset. So
Okay.
resilience to me is almost easier to think about, because you have a challenge that's very clear and it's tough, but you look at it and you work out how to handle it. Whereas I think endurance is more about being able to consistently show up over a long stretch of time when things are really challenging, or really unclear, or structures are confused, or that type of thing. And I think what I learned from that is being really grounded yourself, and being able to, especially if you're in a management or leadership position, being able to be a sense of calm in an otherwise quite stormy, confusing place. And in order to be that, you have to ground yourself, and you have to think about what you need. And sometimes that can be really tough, because you're wanting to be there for everyone else, and you're wanting to solve all the challenges.
Yeah.
So I've learned that actually being really calm, being really focused and purposeful as well. Because I think when things get really tough, we have the temptation to try and do everything, or focus on outputs. Whereas knowing yourself what the why is, and then your team knowing that, and just clearly coming back to that purpose piece and having a mast in the storm, a sort of compass and North Star that just keeps you focused and keeps you going. I think for me, that's probably the most challenging thing, and it continues to be, because I think you have to work at that every single day, every single week. And I think the times that we're living in will depend upon strong endurance to keep going. Um, yeah,
I love that. I talk to my team regularly about the North Star, and I'm aware that sometimes it can feel like corporate jargon or buzzwords and everything there.
exactly. I know.
However, if I'm doing this is what we're aiming towards. If we're steering towards this, if anything is distracting us or taking us away from that, then we have to really gauge, is this the right call or is it worth it? Because this is the goal. We've all agreed this is the goal and this is what we want to be doing. And then it helps give you that mental clarity for decision making, what you say yes to, what you say no to. I'm very much with
Exactly.
you on the why as well. However, I want to pick up something you said very early on in that there, because I have been in that situation much earlier in my career where you said you've had conflicting information from different directors.
Yeah.
And that's, I won't go into my or the situation I was in, but it's, I use the analogy of serving two masters. And what happens when those two masters are maybe not quite aligned and you're stuck in the middle? Now, there will be people listening to this going, I absolutely have been in that situation. I chose to do this. And in fact, I'm happy to share what I did. I eventually said, like, put them both, brought them both together and said, I'm being asked to do these two things, or asked to do these things. And you are both saying that this is both urgent. It's both happening right now. I need to know which one is the priority, because I've got my line manager at the time, and then I've got someone else who somehow is becoming not a line manager, but just delegating work to me frequently at the same level. You two aren't talking.
God.
What is going to happen here? What do you want me to do? Because this is literally your role. If you want me to decide, then I'm going to go with my line manager. That's whether that's right or wrong. I'm just going to go with that there, because that's who I report to. That's who's going to be basing my reviews on. That's it there. Otherwise, sort it out between the two. Once that had happened, there was then a restructure within the company. About 2-3 months later, I'm not going to say it was because of me at all. It probably was a little bit of an impact on it, or at least within there to say, hey, look, we need clearer lines of who reports to who and all the rest of that there. But it was a rather and look, everyone there was absolutely sound. Like, they were absolutely grand. It was clearly miscommunication and two people just not communicating the way they
Yeah.
should. However, it put me in an awkward
Yeah.
situation. For you, how did you navigate that for the
So,
conflicting?
yeah, no, it's interesting to hear your story too. The one that comes to mind most profoundly was I worked for a brand, quite a well-known brand, and the creative director was the name of the brand. So that person is the visionary, the boss, like they're the person. But at that moment in time, the investor had brought in a executive chairman because we needed to get the sales to be where they needed to get to, and the creative director maybe wasn't as current maybe as they could be. And so I had the executive chairman, and I was heading up digital, and the executive chairman saw that as like a key space
Yep.
for what was needed in terms of change. And so I'm just trying to think about the best answer, but it was tough. There was actually a lot of intense meetings, and I was quite early on in my career, and I was in some quite intense meetings and some quite extreme conflicts, I
Yes.
suppose you could
Yeah. Yeah.
say. But one thing I will say though about that time is it was almost easier in some ways than maybe a corporate environment, because everybody knew where they stood. So
Yeah.
I people would be honest with each other. So they knew what the conflict was, and I knew what the conflict was. So that made it easier for me to go away and try to solutionize both, which is usually what I did. And I think being in the digital space really helps, because you can always inform things beyond personal preferences. So I would go back and say, okay, I've actually looked at this in the market, and really interesting that what you say about X is true because we've seen this. However, we have seen, if we are trying to grow into these markets where we know the demand is, we are going to have to lean a little bit more towards that.
Huh?
So for me, data and insight has really been my gold dust for any kind of situation like that, because you need to bring it back to reality. And so that really helped. But yeah, it taught me a lot about creative integrity and reputation alongside business and ROI. And actually, I
Yeah.
think those things are always going to be conflicting to some degree. And I think I probably leaned more towards the latter, and actually learned through the experience of working with this creative director, who is a really inspiring person, that I did need to ensure that they were happy, because that's their brand. Like, they founded
Hmm.
this
Hmm.
whole piece, and they have a lot of relationships that the business rides on. So they need to be able to retain those. So I think it was just having a sense of respect for both and trying to do what I could. And there were times that either one of them was not happy, but we went forward. And I think it was just building up a resilience to that too. So saying, okay, well, I've had to make a decision here. That's not what they wanted, but you have to do the right thing, not the easy thing sometimes, and go with what you know, and have done enough research to know that what you're putting forward is likely to succeed. You're never completely certain in marketing. I think there's always going to be some level of human view, but yeah, bringing in the data, accepting that you're not going to get an ideal outcome, and not getting too attached to that. But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot. And when I look back at it, I almost feel like, well, actually, I knew exactly what the challenge was. So it was kind of easier to navigate than when they're not saying what's wrong. You just know there's something wrong, but you're not quite sure. That's harder, I think, to navigate, to be honest.
I think you hit the nail on the head there with do the right thing, not the easy thing. That is probably going to be the title of this video now. I really like that.
I think I always come back to that. It's
Yeah.
actually in our university values as well, and it's something that at Glasgow that comes up a lot. And yeah, so it's definitely a cultural inspiration for me too. But yeah, I think
Talking
it can
about,
be very difficult.
well, just talking there about universities and cultures. So you were a lecturer over in Saudi Arabia for a while, and so you've been a lecturer over here. You've come to Scotland, and you've led the marketing teams in quite a few credible and respected universities here. And what I'd like to know, because this is such a unique experience to Fiona. There's very few that I know there that would have had the same path as you. And what I'd like to know is what are the differences in culture that you found when working with the students over in Saudi Arabia as opposed to the students in Scotland? And with those cultures, what are the areas that you find rewarding? What are the parts that you find challenging? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah. No, I love talking about this. It's hard to compare, just because I was in Saudi Arabia at a very specific moment in time, and it's something that I look back at with so much fondness, because it really formed me as a person and gave me so many opportunities. But I was there just before Arab Spring. Change was imminent. Like, there was a real sense of possibility and excitement, and that we could drive change. There was a real sense of that. So I worked in the women's campus, and they were so strong, empowered, ready to make the changes that they wanted to see. And within the education space specifically, it felt like that was a space to do it. So when I was there, I worked at King Saud University, which is one of the oldest in the region. I think it's about 74 years old. 74 this year. And at that moment in time, Princess Nora University was being built. So I remember seeing it on the way from the airport. And now Princess Nora University is a world-renowned, one of the largest all-female universities in the world. I think they have about 50,000 students, all women, all graduating, leading the sectors that they work in Saudi and beyond. So to have seen that happen in less than 2 decades is so inspiring, and to have been there at the forefront of that change it is amazing. So there's this real sense of pace and conviction and excitement and possibility and strength, to be honest. Like, people would say to me, what was it like being a woman there? And I think quite often the response is, well, I can't really give you another perspective on that, but because that's one that I have. But actually I learned more empowerment than I have at any other point in my life because of the strength of the people I was around. And they really taught me to stand up for myself, to stand up for things, and to use your voice. And I think they said, you have a freedom to express yourself about certain things. And so I sort of feel like I owe it to them in that way too. So I always try to use the position or the privilege of whatever I have that I'm free to do, that I know I wasn't free to do at another time and another place. So I always come back to that. But equally, in terms of working now in Glasgow, which is actually where I went to uni, so I have the experience as a student and I have experience coming back, and I've been there for about 6 months. But I think working in a heritage institution where there's literally centuries of impact and people and generations before you, it has a whole different feel to it in an equally inspiring way. So right now we are celebrating our 575th anniversary this year. So I've been spending a lot of time in the archives, and it's been so inspiring to see that higher education is so much more than like the bricks and mortar of a building or like a specific area of research. It's a culture that goes back to a time that we can't even imagine. I mean, it's like if you go back to 1451 and what the world was like then, and the fact that the university was opened on a quill that came from Rome, and the foundational purpose was all about providing access to education, which Glasgow has done through every century in so many different ways that other universities haven't. And so I think really it's looking at both of those, and we're in a really interesting time in terms of what's happening in UK higher education versus what's happening in Saudi and Middle East education. And we're at a point where we can really complement each other with our heritage and our generations of impact and the pace and the appetite and ambition of the other regions. And there's a lot of partnerships happening in the transnational education space and branch campuses opening and collaborations in research. And I really think that's where the future of the world is in us working together. So to have been able to see both sides and embrace and benefit from both sides has been amazing. And I got to go back to the region quite recently when I was working at Times Higher Education. So I can see, it's just been amazing to be able to see, oh, look how much things have progressed since I was there till today. And that's just only going to continue. So, yeah.
Generally, I don't know, not anyone to that specific journey, but even close to that. That's where I think it's, and also what a lovely full circle moment to come be a student at a university to then come back into such a level, like to be the deputy director leading, like this is what our marketing be. This is where we can attract the best students. We want to attract the students that are really wanting to learn and all of that. I think it's wonderful. So on that there, I want to sort of keep on that energy that you've got for Glasgow Uni. You've led so many marketing teams within the education space. So you've got people that are relatively new into the education sector, as for you when you started, I was going to say many moons ago, but I mean that with kindness, and more established players. How do you create an environment where essentially they are safe to fail, where it's okay to either make a mistake, because look, there's going to be lots of things, as we say in marketing all the time, we've got to trial, learn, move on, back those learnings, everything else there. I find it essential that my team as well needs to know that we can try these things, fail fast, move on, take that there. But you've got to be able to create the environment to allow that to happen where they're comfortable enough to do that, and we trust each other enough to do that. That it's not a reflection on, so like them personally, that if something doesn't go right, well, that means you're terrible at everything. Like, no, no, it doesn't. Like, these are the circumstances and all the rest of that there. But how have you approached that within Glasgow and the other places that you've worked?
Yeah, I think it's such an important question. So for me, I think you can talk about psychological safety, but actually it's what you model for the team in terms of how are you showing up? Are you taking risks? And are you genuinely creating an environment where people feel that they can be creative or bold or put themselves forward for things and stretch themselves? So, it's all very well saying, oh, this is a safe environment and you can come and do X, Y, Z. But if you don't model that yourself and show that, look, I'm putting myself out there, I'm taking risks, I'm strong enough and robust enough to deal with it, to show you that it's not the end of the world, to show that you can model that. But equally, a dash of vulnerability goes a long way too, to say, actually, you don't have to say you know everything, and be honest about that and say, actually, I'm trying this new thing. I'm not sure if it's going to work, and get people's involvement in that as you do it, because then they start to feel more like they can as well. I've managed to not mention Brene Brown so far, but I will just bring her in because
Mhm.
Jamie knows I'm a huge fan. But she does talk about showing vulnerability, and you need to be able to connect with your team to a certain level. Obviously, you don't want to go too far into a space where they don't feel safe with you because you're not strong, you're not dealing with things, but just show enough about what you are doing in terms of risk taking and your position to then meet them where they're at. Because the other thing to say is you want to meet them there. So you want to be in the risk with them and be in it with them,
Yeah,
not
yeah.
just crack on. Yeah, you can go and give it a go and then watch them. Like, that's not what it's about. So it's meeting them through empathy, through a little bit of vulnerability, honesty, modeling that. The other thing I will say is I find it fascinating. I've learned over time, actually, how you reward or how you show thanks for things that people are doing based on output rather than the intent or the effort to get to the
Mhm,
thing.
mhm.
So, for example, KPIs are all measured on output of things that people already know how to do, and they're doing them really well, and they're sending it out and it looks great, and you're going, amazing, this is brilliant because it looks perfect and it's exactly what you wanted and it looks great. But then you're not accounting for maybe the person who's gone out on a limb and done something really risky and difficult
Yep,
with loads attached to it, and you're not measuring that. You're just measuring the output of the perfection of the piece
yep.
rather than the effort, the conviction, the risk, the decision, whatever they had to do that might be a bigger thing. So I have actually in the past added that to KPIs. I've added in, what new thing have you tried this year, or how have you approached XYZ, or what presentations have you done? Like, just speaking to the person about stretching them
Yep,
in
yep.
whatever way is good for them. But doing it in a way where you are supportive. Like I say, you're meeting them there and you're going, how can I stretch you? Um, what would feel good for you?
I think
And I
that's
think
so
the
important.
yeah.
Sorry, no, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. I think that's so important because you're taking into account the individual themselves, and uh, like, people show up in different ways. You'll have like, so for example, I'm going to talk in quite broad black and white terms here, but let's say you take a more of an introverted person, and they are saying, "Hey, I'm wanting to go to con- conference A here, and I'm going to try this networking part." And I go, "I know that that's going to be a really big deal for you, and I know that that's going to take a lot of energy out of you that day, and it might be yeah, I'm only there for." I say I'm only there. If you're there for 3, 4 hours and then coming back to finish work or wherever you're doing, I know that those 3, 4 hours you're on, it's taking more energy out of you than it would normally, as opposed if you were sitting there and you're in your comfortable space. But you're pushing yourself outside of your boundaries, outside your comfort zone, to try and do something that's essentially benefiting me, benefiting the company. And that should be rewarded. It should be applauded and it should be acknowledged. Like it really should be like, hey, I appreciate what you're doing and how did that feel? Like that's again, I ask everyone, how did that make you feel? How did that feel? Was that all right? Was it what are the assumptions you had going in? Were those assumptions met? Was there anything that you learned? Anything like this that we can break down those barriers and maybe you want to do it again. Or it might be as horrific as you thought it might have been and you never want to do it again. And we know. And that's okay. We won't put you in that position, or we now know not that position is not going to happen again. But that acknowledgement at an individual level, I think, takes empathy, as you say, that I want, like Think Bambu talks about it in marketing, that I think we have to practice. But if you can get that with your team, I think that really does separate the transactional managers from the transformative when they're listening to their team, listening to the individual and adapting. And the fact you're adapting to KPIs to accommodate that, I think that's wonderful. I think that's really,
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
super nice. The if I was to go back, I would done this a little bit there, but we've gone through quite a bit of your journey here from lecturer to the deputy director here. If we were to go back to day one of Fiona has graduated from Glasgow, you've got your first job. I think you mentioned there was it was a startup that you joined. That might not be correct, but whoever it is, the first day, taking into everything that you know now, with all the lessons that you've learned, the wins, the losses, everything from that there, what advice would you give to baby Fiona on her first day?
So many things. Um, I think actually the thing that I would say is to not get too attached to the outcome of whatever it is, to success or failure. Because I think as long as you show up and you're doing your best, if we're always striving for that feeling of success, it's a risky place to be because we think that success is ours to own and failure is ours to own. And actually, there's always so many external factors. There's always things or people or situations that are involved with the outcome of any single thing that I wouldn't take to personal attachment to. So it's like just be grounded, because if you do have successes, they might not be sustained. You could be, you're only as good as your last rodeo, right? So I feel like it's just that sense of, just staying grounded and not getting too attached to failure or success, and knowing that as long as you show up and do the absolute best that you can do and be passionate about it and be genuine about it, then that's what counts. And it's the people you work with as well on the way. But I think just for a really long time, I was so focused on having the best outcome and everything, and it was so devastating, like I say, when the startups failed and when this happened and that happened. And actually, I think just having a level of calm and grounding and perspective on things, and keeping yourself and your support network in place in your life as the thing that you attach to. Um, I think that would be my genuine advice.
That's good. I wouldn't want you to lead baby Fiona up a different path. So this is what you
I
to focus
know.
on.
I think it's just, yeah, I just think I was very, very like striving all the time. And I wouldn't change that, but I would also just say, just don't attach to the outcome too much. Um, I think it was Evie Pomporas who said that. She's another one of my favorites, and she's a really good leadership coach. And she says, just don't take yourself too seriously either way. Just, you're doing what you're doing, and that's great. But, it's don't get attached to the success and don't get attached to the failure. Just keep going, basically.
That's advice like that. There will be others or people listening that need to hear that. because it's not a reflection of them. It is a reflection, but it's also not a deep, like, it's not a reflection of you as a person. It's a reflection of that work
Exactly.
there. But
Exactly.
like, as you
Exactly.
say,
Yeah.
it's not, you're not as good as your last rodeo. There's going to be another. Keep going there and that there. And like, I know you are a very, a quietly driven person. You're not going to be the, I say this like with kindness, you're not going to be the loudest person in the room. You're not going to be the one that's, on the table is going, yeah, listen to me, all of that there. But what you are able to do is create an energy that is, as you say, calm, grounded, but with direction, and t- keeping that to your younger self, and not to get swept up in other parts there that might not be as authentic to them, I think is a wonderful part, because as a quality for yourself, that's something that I've always noticed about you is, for those that have, I say, more introverted tendencies, there's power behind the silence, and there's power behind just going, like, yeah, I've said what I said, and I've said it with purpose. I've not needed to raise my voice or anything like that, and I think that's
Yeah, I
wonderful.
don't need to speak for the sake of it. Or
Exactly.
speak when we have
Yeah,
something to say. And yeah, and each to their own. And there's a need for all that diversity in the workplace, isn't there? Like you have all your different kinds of leaders and all your different kinds of people. But I think as well, I was just going to say on the calm thing, it's quite interesting because sometimes you don't feel calm at all, but if you weirdly behave that way, just do it anyway. Just act like you're completely calm. Then you start to become the thing that you're doing.
yeah.
It's actually it's a true fact. Like if you actually do the thing that you want to be, you start becoming it anyway. It's just a kind of so that's what I always say to myself. Like just whatever's going on, just keep that sense of calm grounding in yourself. And as long as you've got that, then even if you're not feeling it, it will start to manifest anyway.
It's
Um,
so true with that,
so
because you can take that from, like, it's channeling those nerves and going, okay, I know that in my like, so I call it sometimes like little tippy toe penguin feet, where people start getting nervous and you can see their bodies shifting so far, and I go, okay, we need to do some grounding exercises here sometime. Yeah, what does that look like? And if we're presenting, I mean, a true story here, which is bizarre, but I noticed that one of uh, let's see, one of the more junior people that I was working with for a pitch, they were coming in, and it was that traditional thing where here's the whole team, and half of them you're never going to see them again, but here's the team that we're pitching towards, and we brought them in, and I saw that she was feeling quite nervous, and I was like, right, okay, we're going to do something together, and it's going to be a little bit weird, but I'm going to take off my shoes, and we're going to stand in our socks, and I think she was like in tights or something, but we're going to have our feet on the ground, and we're going to channel this and get ourselves here. We're rooted. We're good. We're going to practice this. And it was like, keep that going. So eventually you do manifest it. So whenever you're presenting, or having to, in a situation where you don't feel calm, you can present the notion of being calm. But that idea of rooting yourself to the ground, I don't know whether it helped her. She said it didn't at the time. She might have just gone, yeah, thanks,
go
Jamie. I'm
on.
going to put my shoes back on now.
We should get feedback on that. I'm
Yeah,
curious, like
we'll see how that worked. But
how did that
it's
actually work out?
yeah, yeah. She said, yeah, weird. Jamie told me to take off my shoes, so we did. We stood there for a minute, did some breathing exercises, and then tried it again. But so just on that, there, you mentioned there about having, you mentioned a few times about having your network. I like to end all of these little sessions talking about gratitude. It usually takes a village for anyone's success, and what I'd like to do is give you the floor to give kudos to either a person, a group of people, whoever it may be, that you could say, actually, they really had a really positive impact on my career, like personal growth, anything like that.
Yeah, God. I think, like you say, every single thing that you do and developing is down to like so many people that have helped or supported at different points. And I think, I don't know if it's because we've been talking about it today, but just that first experience working in Saudi with these people around me, I was only 23. I was just straight out of uni myself and teaching people that were the same age as me. And they all rallied round me, and just that sense of support and empowerment that they said, always speak up, always, because I had to actually go at that moment in time and get something that I should have had, which I didn't. And they were like, you need to fight for this. And I think that has always stayed with me, in that sense of support and empowerment from those really early days. And then those have also been informed throughout the years by people in different ways. And I think I am really lucky. I do have a really strong support network around me. And I think your support network needs to have diversity in it. So I have the champion people who always give me a boost, and they always tell you you're amazing because you need to hear it that day. And then you have like the cynics who they will always give me like that really difficult thing that I need to hear that I maybe haven't listened to. And they'll repeat it. And then I'll have, whether it's family, whether it's friends, I have people in the industry who I can call up if I'm needing to talk something more, industry focused. I have people within the leadership space if there's something there. I do feel really lucky that way. And I do have a number of people around, and mentors and support systems and friends, and my family as well. My parents have always just been there and championed every single thing. So if I'm working for fashion, suddenly my dad's looking at a fashion website for the first time. If I'm doing like a university, like they really get into it and really support it, and show that enthusiasm for it and become brand advocates. And I really appreciate that. It's a bit of a long-winded answer, but I think I'm just from that very early days, that sense of support and empowerment, through to like my personal support system, and then people that are at the end of the phone and they know who they are. And I'm really grateful, because I think these are tough times. I think being working right now in any industry is tough, and you definitely need to have those people that you can get advice from,
Yep.
who know you, who they really know you, and they know what to test you with as well as what to help you with.
Can't get better than that. So to wrap this up, Fiona, people would like to know what's next for you right now, and where can we find you?
I guess right now, obviously, I'm just new in post at Glasgow. We are having a really exciting year. So we've got our 575th anniversary, and we've got a launch of a new strategy, a new principle, etc. So I would just say we're looking to connect with the local community in Glasgow and Scotland, and anyone who's interested and wants to get in touch, I'd love to hear from on that. And then also I'm on LinkedIn, and always happy to talk, especially about higher education and getting into higher education if you're thinking about it as a career, or especially in sort of women management posts as well, because I think that the industry has not got as many spaces as maybe it could for women. And so I'm always happy to talk to. I actually mentor a few people at the moment, and I'm always open to that.
Well, mentorship is okay. I mentioned at the beginning here about the creative writing, that direction there. That's fascinating. Mentorship, I'll get that on the next one. But Fiona, thank you very much. For everyone, once again, thank you so much for giving your time to the Think Bambu podcast. I appreciate all of you. So take care, and bye-bye.